My daughter does it all the time.
5,
From here to here
4,
on Filthy.
3, 2.
What's her name again?
Thais, Tai for short. Carmen Woodville Albert is her full name.
One time when I was a kid, we were at the beach and a pod of dolphins came along and everyone was very excited. They were all watching the dolphins, all clapping, and he jumped in. He just jumped into the water and joined the pod and just swam off. He came back 20 minutes later, having spontaneously swum with the dolphins, just joined their pod and swum down the coast for a little while. And that was very him. That kind of magic and bravery and spontaneity and whimsy. Parents met in the mid-70s. It's a story that they loved to tell and told often while I was growing up. They were living in the same apartment building, and my mom wanted to see some of the other apartments. I think she was considering moving apartments within the building. And so a mutual friend brought her to meet my dad and see his apartment. That was sort of the main premise. And she always described that first moment when she saw him, when he opened the door and she was taking him in and he was taking her in, because it was love at first sight. They both described that they had never felt the way they felt upon seeing the other, and that it was magical and a sense of familiarity, like they knew each other already, like it was a reunion, and just instant attraction, instant fascination and intrigue. And her first few thoughts upon realizing how attracted she was, he's too young, he's too good looking, and he's an actor. All reasons in her mind why she should not be dating him. She was 12 years older, mid-30s. He was in his mid-20s. None of which stopped her from dating him at all. But those were her first thoughts. And then finally, also, I wish I'd worn makeup was her fourth thought. But it didn't matter. He was smitten. But now they knew each other. And so pretty soon, my dad found some excuse to go up to her apartment. And they always tell the story of how she offered him. She said, "Can I get you anything?" And he said, "A kiss." And she gave it to him. And the rest became history.
The way I know Edward is probably different than the way a lot of people here knew Edward. In 1997, I was riding my horse in Escondido Canyon by the Albert property. Long story short, I'm trampled by my horse crossing a stream, and my left leg is severed at my shin. It severed except for part of my calf muscle. My horse tramples me. Edward ends up rescuing me moments before I'm bleeding out, and he does that by squeezing my arteries shut with his bare hand. It's a true story. And Tai, his daughter, called the paramedics and ambulance, and he stayed with me until they came and whisked me off to UCLA Hospital. It's something I write about in a book called, for those of you who are interested, Not by Accident, Reconstructing a Careless Life. Edward is a huge part of this book. Not only does it save my life, but for years after, he becomes a brother to me, a father that I never had, a best friend, someone who was always there on the other side of the phone to share my life with. I don't even know how to begin to tell you what he meant to me and what his wife Kate meant to me and what Tai means to me. They really became this kind of psychic family for me. I have too many memories of him to even begin here in this little brief time, but I do remember a few things in particular that he said to me when he was leaning over me, squeezing my arteries shut, literally having my life in his hands. He said, "I'm trying to remember the things I learned from playing a doctor on TV." I also remember, this is a hard memory, I'm sorry. I also remember going with him to one of his doctor's appointments when he had been diagnosed. And he was asking the doctor about different types of treatments for cancer. And he brought up Lance Armstrong and how Lance Armstrong had recovered from cancer. the doctor said very coldly, well, he had a curable form of cancer. And the look on Edward's face and the realization that he had an incurable form of cancer was really devastating. It's something that I will never, ever forget. But in typical fashion, he didn't dwell on that. We went out of the doctor's room and he started asking me about myself and started giving me advice about my love life and my career as a writer. And he was just always like that. He was just always a force for light, which is not to say he didn't have this very forceful other part of him. If he thought that anything he loved was threatened, whether it was his family or his friends or the environment or an animal or a plant that he had planted and seen grow for 20 years, he was incredibly protective and fierce as well. I don't even know how to begin to say what he meant. He kind of meant everything. I think about him every day of my life, and I'm aware that I have a life because of him. Thank you.
Good evening. I don't know what makes me prouder tonight to be here as a nominee or here with my son, the movie star.
Movie star?
Yeah.
You never told me that a movie star has to get up at 5 in the morning, smear funny yellow stuff all over their face, and remember lines in front of a camera.
Well, now you know. Yeah. I've never heard a better definition of a movie. But be patient. Be patient. There are more delectable dividends in wait for you. And I want to give you some advice.
Please? Not the Judge Hardy, Mickey Rooney, man-to-man routine? I know about girls.
Yes, I know you know about girls. But you don't know how to announce the nominees for the best achievement in sound.
But I bet you I'm going to learn.
All right. What? Not yet? Oh, I beg your pardon. Then now, thank you, Edward.
My name is Ed Begley Jr., and I had the good fortune to meet Edward Albert back in 2003 when I did a project about Cesar Chavez. It's called Cesar and Reuben, and Edward Albert played a character in the play called Nailer, and he sang and danced and was fluent in Spanish, singing these incredible rap songs in Spanish, rapid-fire songs. He was a force of nature. I was so lucky to meet him. I was so lucky to know him. We stayed in touch. He inspired me in so many ways. He inspired me as an actor. I thought the world of him since I first saw him in Butterflies Are Free many years ago. And he was a great actor, a very handsome man, and just a wonderful actor. Every part he did, he was totally believable and exciting and magnetic, and he just was an extraordinary man. But Edward Albert and I worked at the El Portal Theater, and that place was very dear to him because his mother had played there when it was a legit theater. Then it became a movie theater and back to a legitimate theater where you did plays and such and musicals as we did back in 2003. It remains so to this day. But he was brilliant. We stayed in touch, and his courage through his illness and courage of his wonderful family, his dear wife, who we also miss. And I'm so grateful to be in touch with his family, especially Tai, and to remember and be moved by his incredible body of work and the way he was as a father, a great family man, and a dear, dear friend. I'm all the better knowing Edward Albert. I knew his father, Eddie Albert, as well, and my dad knew him and worked with him on a television show back in the 1950s, believe it or not. So there are many strong ties between our families, and I cherish them. We love you, Edward. We miss you.
Hi, my name is Dana Barron. I've been in the acting business close to 50 years, and Edward was one of my greatest friends, one of the most amazing people I have ever met and will ever meet. He is very, very, very much missed by all my friends, and on his birthday we call all my friends and say, it's Edward Albert Day, it's a celebration, it's a holiday. I even have my kids celebrate, and we all talk about it and text about it, and I'll go out to dinner to celebrate his birthday. It's a holiday. We met doing a very low budget project called The New Kid, and it never was made. It was funded by a family that wanted their child to be a star, and one of their kids did become a star. But anyway, we did that project, and then years later we did something called Man in the Iron Mask, which was our dream project. He got to sword fight and I got to wear period piece clothing. It was unbelievably fun. Then I produced a movie called Night Class, and Ron Perlman was in it, and of course I got Edward in it, and we worked on that. And there was another, we've worked on like 5 projects together. So we've done a lot of work, at least, as actors and as friends. Wonderful, wonderful person. Stories. We have so many stories. It's ridiculous. I actually helped out his father and lived in his father's house. Eddie Albert, he had Alzheimer's, and so he needed help with his dad, so I lived at the house for a while, and that was special. Every day, there's not a day that doesn't go by I don't think about him, his magical qualities. You know, he was a sculptor, a horseback rider, obviously. He could dance, he could drum, he could sing. He did so much, it was ridiculous. A true entertainer in every way. And came from Hollywood royalty. His mom, his dad, loved it. I loved being around them. Incredible people.
Remember, you used to have a circular table, like a coffee table, dark mahogany. And I remember as a baby, when there'd be a party here, that you guys would put me under the table to sleep. But I'd never sleep because sooner or later I'd hear Mom's feet on the table, dancing on the table, and the table still to this day has her heel marks all over the table. You and Mom always kept all the guitars under the piano. And as a little kid, when there was a party here, the piano was my treehouse. That was the safest place to be and still be part of the action. And so I remember growing up literally surrounded by guitars that I'd make little forts and houses out of the guitars, including this one, and their cases. But there was always tremendous amount of music here.
I'm Dr. Cheryl Eritt, and I'm a psychologist now, but I was a child actor from the age of 4 till about 25. And when I was 21, I got to work with Edward Albert in an after-school special called Daddy Can't Read. I had been working primarily in New York, and I came out to LA, and the special was about a family where the father was unable to read, and his daughter and the community helped him, and it was a good message. It was a wonderful cast. Marcia Strassman played my mom, Edward played my dad, Richard Roundtree and Joey Travolta and Kathy Rigby were all in the cast. Kathy Rigby played the gym teacher, which was a little bit intimidating, but we had a lot of fun. And one of my fondest memories from working with Edward is him playing a guitar. I don't know if it was his guitar or if it was on the set already, but he got everybody together with these sing-alongs and got everybody having a wonderful time and singing, and he was so much fun. And I'd been really excited to work with him because I had seen him in Butterflies Are Free with Goldie Hawn, and I had really enjoyed that. I was excited to get to work with him. He was wonderful. He made everybody feel appreciated. He was professional. He was warm. He was fun. Really terrific guy. Really glad that you're making this film.
My name's Alan Silberberg. I first met Edward when I was at Paramount Pictures as an executive, and he came as part of the California State Parks Commission and to a meeting, and he and I met and started talking, and then collaborated on a project with the LA County Schools. That was a video project designed to teach high school students about basic stuff like how to shake hands when you're in a job interview, how to create a resume, how to put yourself forward as coming out of high school into the real world. And so I asked Edward to help and to sort of be the celebrity on the video, but also to work with a number of the kids that we were working with in the high schools to try to share some of the experience that he had and with them. For them, he was probably the first Hollywood celebrity that any of these people had ever met. So there was a tremendous amount of excitement. They really bonded with him. And it was a real pleasure to watch him working with these high school kids And you could just see his natural generosity and his humanity come out in dealing with this. From that, Edward and I ended up becoming very good personal friends. And I ended up traveling with him a few times around California as part of his work with the California Parks Commission. And then also, when he started to get sick, I was with him a lot both at the hospital and at his home when he was fighting cancer. And I really got to know his wife Kate. Tai was much younger at the time, so she and I probably weren't as close, only from an age difference. And they had a dog whose name was Ishi. He was actually a wolf. He was a full wolf, big animal. Also one of the nicest, most devoted animals I've ever met in my life. And as Edward was getting sick, Ishi was also getting sick, and the two of them kind of helped each other in that experience. When Edward passed away, I led the service to honor his life, and it was a very powerful experience. I deeply remember doing it, and it was a real honor to do it. It was sad also, obviously. But then we also, Tai and myself and Dana, we went to take his ashes, and we went to a ceremonial place and buried them. And that was also a hugely powerful moment in my life. Prior to that, when he had been alive, he came to my wedding as my guest. And I'm Jewish. In the Jewish tradition, we also do a lot of dancing. Edward came into our wedding, and because of his background dancing, his mom and dad were both dancers. He had been a dancer, a triple threat in Hollywood. And he was able to come in and do the hora, which is a traditional Jewish dance, better than most of the Jewish people who'd grown up their whole lives dancing it. And it was really awesome to watch, and we have it on video, and it was a cherished experience for me. So I got to work with Edward both professionally and also as friends. We went on a lot of hikes together, and but I was there a lot as he was sick in the later days of his life. So I did get to see a different side of him. And part of what he was trying to do at the time was, start to work on his legacy, but also the legacy of his dad, of Eddie Albert, and the stories and the environmentalism and the activism that the family has had. And so I just want to end this by saying that Edward was a real special part of my life. I was really honored to know him and include him in my life. I still think about him often, and I know other people do as well who are close to him. And when I go to Malibu, I make a point of trying to stop by the waterfalls that are named after him, and make that hike and go say hello. So I'm glad that you're putting this together, and thanks for doing this. I'm excited to see what everyone else has to say about someone who is so important to me. Thank you.
And it's an idea that I'm very excited about. And what we're going to do is basically set it up so that everybody in the fan club with one phone call can basically trigger a mechanism that gets letters or prayers or phone calls or counseling or whatever is needed. And I think that the concept of an extended family really applies. And in the world we live in today, more and more we appreciate how important family and friends are.
Been trying to make contact with him for quite a while because I wanted to run his fan club, but I wanted to do it with his permission. And I was beginning to think I would never ever make contact with him. Then in 1993, Great Expectations in Austin, Texas announced that they had him as a guest, and I decided I was going no matter what the cost. I was sitting in reception writing some postcards home when he arrived, and he was looking really nervous. I smiled at him and gave him a wave, and he smiled back. Went round and politely asked if I could take some photos, and Edward said, yeah, go ahead. So I took a few shots of him and sort of thanked him and returned to my seat. Gwen Lord, who also ran Helpers Network with me, she went round with her little camera and took some photos too, and then she pointed to me and I said, Jacqui, well, hi, at last we meet, come sit by me. I was there straight away. So anyway, he gave me a big hug and a kiss on my cheek, and I remember feeling like a celebrity at that point, as we were almost blinded by all the flashes from cameras taking photos of the two of us finally meeting. Thought he didn't know about me at all, but obviously he did, so he knew more than I realised. What does Edward mean to me? He was a very dear friend. He even wrote that he was honoured to be my friend, and I was just as honoured that he considered me as such. We got on because I treated him like an ordinary human being. I teased him, he teased me back. If I poked him in the arm, he poked me back. He cheered me up when I was down. He was charming, he was kind, with a wicked sense of humour. He was incredibly good looking, and he knew it, and he used it to tease. Those eyes of his ranged from grey to deep blue depending on his mood, and they were exceedingly expressive. I liked him also for not blindly believing what other people said, but finding out the facts for himself. I know I sound like I'm putting him on a pedestal, maybe I am slightly. I know he had his faults, but they were far outweighed by his kindness and generosity. So I'm simply going to finish by saying he meant that much to me. I actually wrote a novel where I made him the hero.